Spoiler warning for Loki episodes 1 through 4. Hello, I'm the Infinity Theorist, Quake spin-off enthusiast, and Loki episode 4 gave us possibly the most disgusting relationship in the MCU. Loki and Sylvie. I know, it's a sick, twisted, and just plain gross relationship. Just as bad as shipping Loki with Thor or Tony with Peter. I don't care if they don't have the same DNA, even though they most definitely do, since they are the same person. They both have the same biological parents and adoptive parents. I'll talk about this disgusting ship and more in my review and analysis of Loki, episode 4. The first thing I have in my notes is about Sylvie's childhood. Right before she was arrested, she was playing with a Valkyrie toy. Valkyrie, of course, the race of warriors that Valkyrie comes from. Yeah, just wanted to mention that. After Sylvie's arrested, we see at this point in not time, the judge is not Renslayer, but someone else. I found that interesting. After that, Sylvie escapes, and Judge Renslayer wakes up and goes to see the timekeepers. She does a bit of gaslighting, and then we cut to Loki and Sylvie on Lamentis. Sylvie says the universe wants freedom, so it manifests chaos. She then says this is why the TVA went after her, that her existence was her Nexus event. Except that is flat out wrong. If that were the case, then she would have been arrested a lot earlier. Now, there's something else going on here. What really was Sylvie's Nexus event? Why did it happen? I really hope this is addressed later in the series. Mobius says they are using the magnified Nexus threshold, which would apparently show a Nexus event happening if someone stepped on the wrong leaf. I think that is interesting. Not everything in the Sacred Timeline is exactly the same like we thought. The Sacred Timeline seems to be a fluid entity, almost like the time stream idea mixed with the branch multiverse theory. We obviously know that if something big enough happens, it will create a Nexus event. Apparently, Loki being an alligator, as we see in the post-credits scene, and Sylvie being born weren't big enough things to cause Nexus events on their own. Instead, these things happening just changed the timeline a very minor amount until they finally did something they weren't supposed to and got arrested by the TVA. So it seems that minor changes to the timeline won't immediately create branches. They instead just change the Sacred Timeline ever so slightly to fit with these changes. We see this in episode 2 also, when Loki and Mobius go to Pompeii and make changes there, and when we see Sylvie at Roxcart. Because remember, she's been there at least twice, and the first time she was there, she wasn't there, and the second time she was there. Does that make sense? Probably not. But do I understand it? Sadly, yes. Okay. Interestingly enough, Nexus events can't form just at any point in the timeline randomly. Well, they can, but they have to meet very strict criteria, and the magnified Nexus threshold proves that. Minor things don't always lead to big changes. We learn that Lokis may lose, but they survive. That's how things happen. Lokis are survivors. Loki and Sylvie then create the most interesting branch of reality ever. I want to take a look at that. Look, this is a normal branch, right? Perfectly fine, nothing wrong. Slightly curved, but still works. This is Loki and Sylvie's branch. It's interesting, right? Look at all the jiggly, jagged, whatever. It's like zigzagged out. It's interesting, right? Does this have something to do with the fact that they're both variants in a different timeline? They're two different variants from two different timelines in this new timeline? Or is it that Loki finally loves himself in the weirdest way possible? Why is this branch so chaotic? I want to know. The TVA takes in Loki and Sylvie, and Loki is sent into Time Loop. This Time Loop is a bad memory prison with none other than Lady Sif. That's right, another Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. character in the main MCU. Well, no, obviously Sif was introduced in Thor, and is a big cameo in 2 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's probably a joke about how she is the only Asgardian Marvel can afford for TV shows, but I'm not going to make it. Instead, what I'm going to do is talk about Mobius. He visits Renslayer's office, she tells him to work as Loki, then Mobius talks to B-15. He confirms that the TVA have brought in Kree, Titans, and vampires. The Kree are, of course, the race of aliens that Captain Marvel lived with for a while. They also appear multiple times throughout Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They are the aliens that created the Inhumans, and they are the ones in control of the Lighthouse in Deke's original timeline. Titans, of course, are aliens from the planet of Titan, not to be confused with Saturn's moon of the same name. No, Titan is the planet where Thanos is actually from. Vampires. We all know what vampires are. This little line about vampires seems to be a slight hint that vampires do exist in the MCU and is a small setup for the upcoming movie we know is coming, Blade. Blade is a vampire hunter. Loki tells us that he is scared of being alone, then Mobius frees him from the time loop, and then Mobius interrogates Loki with questions mostly about Sylvie and her plan, but sometimes about other stuff. Of course, Loki lies to try to get away with stuff, then Mobius tells Loki that Sylvie was pruned. Mobius then figures out that Loki has a crush on Sylvie, or more accurately, Loki has a crush on himself. This ship has created some controversy in the fandom. I personally find it disgusting. Don't give me they're variants, they don't have the same DNA excuse. I talked about this at the top of the episode. Even though they are different people, it's still weird and disgusting. I get why they did it, the whole self-love thing, but still. They have the same biological parents and the same adoptive parents. Why do they have to be a couple? It's just gross. As you can see, I am very upset about Loki and Sylvie. That shouldn't be how all mess works. You can't fall in love with yourself in another timeline. Okay, put it like this. Loki has a brother named Thor. Thor has a sister named Sylvie. Loki and Sylvie fall in love. Do you see how wrong this is? Do you see what I'm saying? I really hope Loki figures out that Mobius was wrong fast. If it is not romantic love. It is familial love. There. That's how I feel about Loki and Sylvie being together. It is disturbing. Anyway, Loki tells Mobius that all of the TVA agents are variants. And Mobius doesn't buy it, but Loki tries his best to convince him. It doesn't work at the moment, and Loki is put back into his time cell. We cut to B-15, who is staring at a sign that says, Verify Thorough Deletion. Interestingly enough, the sign lets two of the variants survive. I think this kind of helps prove my theory from earlier about how Nexus events can only happen under specific circumstances. Both of these variants stuck to the sacred timeline, but they might have, a slightly different nose. Even though they aren't exactly the same, they're still both allowed to exist. B-15 goes to interrogate Sylvie, then we cut to Mobius and Renslayer again. Renslayer asks where Mobius would go if he could go anywhere on the timeline, and he says he'd prefer to stay at work. Apparently, the Timekeepers want to see the variants pruned, and they want Mobius there too. Mobius and Renslayer talk about their friendship, and then Mobius switches the Tempads and leaves. B-15 and Sylvie end up at Rothcart, and B-15 learns the truth about her past and how the TVA have lied to her. Mobius watches C-20's interrogation and also learns the truth about the TVA and how they lied to him. Mobius goes to Loki with a plan to take down the TVA. He still isn't completely sure about it, saying that he'll have to trust the word of two Lokis, but Loki assures him that he is right about taking down the TVA, telling him to trust the word of a friend. Mobius then tells Loki that he can be whoever or whatever he wants to be, even someone good. They exit the time cell, and Renslayer and some agents are waiting outside. Mobius reveals that where he would really want to go is wherever he's really from. He talks about his jet ski, and then he gets pruned. Loki starts crying for his friend, and you can see a little hint of pain in Renslayer's eyes as Mobius is pruned, but that quickly goes away. And that was the saddest scene of the series so far. And that was alliteration. On the way to the Timekeepers, Sylvie asks about her Nexus event. It turns out Renslayer doesn't remember what it was. That's a mystery to be solved soon, I hope. Loki and Sylvie find out the only reason they were brought to the Timekeepers was to die, and Loki says, I've lost track of the number of times I've died, which is a very interesting quote, because he does die a lot. Him, Coulson, and Vision are the three MCU characters that die the most. Loki has died 3 times, with his pruning being the 4th. I'll get to that in a bit, if you were wondering. P-15 comes in to save the day as the fight breaks out. Renslayer tries to protect the Timekeepers, and then we find out the Timekeepers are fake. They are mindless androids. This, honestly, isn't too surprising, but it does raise the question Loki asks, who really created the TVA? Loki tries to confess his weird and disgusting feelings for Sylvie, then he gets pruned by Renslayer. Sylvie turns the pruning stick on Renslayer and asks for information. Then the credits roll to the tune of If You Love Me, Really Love Me by Brenda Lee. After that, we get a post-credit scene of Loki waking up and asking if he's dead. It turns out he's not, and what we get to see is a bunch of other Lokis there too. We have Jack Veal's portrayal of Kid Loki, Richard E. Grant's classic Loki, Deobia O'Perry's boastful Loki, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, hopefully I am, and an alligator Loki variant the fandom is referred to as Loki Gator and croaky. I prefer the former because this is an alligator and not a crocodile. Just saying. Before we get into the review, I would like to mention that I have a podcast. It is called Infinity Theorist Unscripted Rants, or ITOR for short. I mostly talk about fandom, but sometimes I'll go off topic or just plain not know what I'm talking about. Don't worry, you'll get used to it. It's available wherever you get your podcast, and there's a link to it in the description. Hey, while you're down in the description, let me tell you about Infinity 600, a project for a world record. It is a project I created as a kind of internet community thing. There will be 600 participants, and every participant will contribute 1 hour of footage that will be edited into the longest video on YouTube. If that sounds interesting to you, sign up. It's completely free. Full rules are on the website. Just a few more things in the description: my live channel, my Instagram, and my TikTok. I do live streams sometimes, very rarely, and also very rarely I post on TikTok. I do post on Instagram, not very often, but more often than the others. Now for the review. First, the title reveal. This episode is called The Nexus Event. It doesn't reveal too much about the episode, but it does tell us how it gets started, with Loki and Sylvie causing a Nexus event on the Mantis. I think this is a pretty decent title. I'll give it a 91 out of 100. As for the episode, I did enjoy it. Though I didn't enjoy Loki and Sylvie's romantic subplot, I didn't enjoy the answers this episode finally started to give. We are making progress in this series with this episode, and I'm all here for it. I'll also give the episode a 91 out of 100. That obviously just averages out to 91 out of 100. Okay, you can watch another video by clicking the top left, top right, and bottom left corner of the screen. Before you do that, click the bottom right corner of the screen to subscribe so you can see more videos like this. And every week, mostly every week, and click the bell so you can be notified when those videos come out. And yeah. I will see you as soon as I can. Oh, also subscribe, follow my podcast, do everything that I said earlier in the shameless self-promo I made earlier. And yeah, that is everything I have for you today. Goodbye, and I will see you next time.